Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
It's Tuesday, that means it's Ask Rob and Rob Day. Luckily, 2 listeners have done their bit and sent us some wonderful property questions, and that means that we can do our bit and supply some answers. So those coming up in just a sec, but don't just be content with listening to other people's questions, send us one of your own.
You should know this number by now, but just in case it's not imprinted on your memory, you can call in on 013 808 0035, or you can go to propertyhub.net/ask and leave us a message via the website. That's exactly what Matt has done, so let's listen to his question.
Hi Rob and Rob, this is Matt from York. Thanks ever so much for the great content you've been putting out over the years. Been a long time follower. Just got a question to ask regarding the stamp duty or the current stamp duty. My question is, if I've got some houses that are currently under myself as a personal buy-to-let mortgage, would now be a good time to transition these into a corporation whilst the stamp duty is going to be at its lowest time? And if so, are there any tips that you could provide on doing that? Thanks ever so much and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Matt. The answer to that question is yes. Because stamp duty is temporarily lower, it probably does make it a good time to move properties across from your own ownership into a company compared to before the stamp duty reduction. Of course, we can't say what the situation is going to be in the future, so it might get even better than it is now for some reason. We don't know, but what we can say is now is better than it was. However, while it's better, the difference is probably pretty marginal when you compare it to all the costs that you're still going to incur. So stamp duty hasn't gone away completely. There's still that 3% surcharge for investors. And if the property's grown in value since you first bought it, then there may be capital gains tax to pay. On top of that, there's all the costs that go along with transacting in property at all. And because you're on both sides of this transaction, you've got 2 sets of legal fees and all the associated costs. You're going to have costs associated with any mortgage and so on and so on. As a result, moving a property into a company often sounds appealing because the ongoing tax savings are quite easy to understand. But when you weigh that up against the upfront costs of making the change, you can find that it would take years and years and years for you to actually make your money back. And of course, that's assuming that there's no change in the rules in the meantime. And of course, that's assuming there's no change to the rules in the future. So I'd say do those calculations. And if it was a close thing before, the reduction in stamp duty may just tip the balance for you. But make sure you speak to your accountant, get a firm grip of all the costs and everything that goes along with it, and make your decision with all that information rather than feeling rushed into doing something now just because there's a deadline.
So next up, our lovely caller has not left their name, so we'll just call this person Samuel.
Hello, Rob and Rob. Just been listening to your podcast now for, I'd say, a little over 3 months, and I must admit, quite inspirational, in fact, very inspirational, and I've learnt so much from your podcasts. My situation is I've just invested an unbelievable amount of money in terms of my property education some 18 months ago, and I can honestly say that there's not much more I'm getting from that experience than what I'm experiencing within your own podcast. So I am extremely appreciative of your help and support. My question is a very simple question. You've referenced a number of cities and towns that you would speculate are good investments in terms of property investing. However, one town that I'm particularly interested in and would really value your input is Huddersfield. It has got a university. The prices seem to work. Just wondering, taking into consideration as well the current market and situation with the pandemic, do you believe that that is a viable investment for a buy-to-let proposition? Would very much appreciate your input into that.
Thanks, Samuel. Thank you for your question. Huddersfield. Is it a good investment area? It's not a good place for a suntan because I've never seen the sun every time I've been to Huddersfield, so it's in a bit of a valley, but that doesn't mean it's not a good investment area. And actually, I would say it's an interesting area to invest. Its proximity to Manchester and Leeds is the reason for that. It sits in the middle of the two and is a commuter town to both of them. As you pointed out, it has a university, it also has a decent rugby and football team, and it's a perfectly nice area. I've been quite a few times. So, does that make it a good place for investment? Well, potentially yes. For me, the fundamentals are there. Just because property prices haven't really gone great guns there yet, doesn't mean it won't do in the future. And actually, if you find that you've got fundamentals, which it has, and the potential of good returns, which it also has, then it's a recipe for a great investment and potential capital growth for the future. Before you, and potentially now a lot of other people, go and rush into investing in Huddersfield, do consider Leeds as an option before you go there. And the reason for that is Leeds is one of the reasons that Huddersfield will do well. But Leeds itself, the prices are still pretty reasonable. It's not as far on in the cycle as some other cities. And there's still great opportunities there. So going to Huddersfield, yes, is potentially a smart move, but it might be a few years before you see the increase in values. Whereas Leeds is already starting to move, but has plenty left in the tank. So it's not to say don't do it. I'd invest in Huddersfield myself, but just to look at the neighbouring cities first, just to make sure you can't get just as good or nearly as good deal there, because if you can, chances are you'll do better over the long term. Whatever you decide, Samuel, best of luck with your investment.
So there you go. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Samuel. 2 more questions dispatched. We will be back to do it again next week. But before that, of course, we will be back with the Property Podcast on Thursday. So hopefully we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.